Their journey began in Yasharel. But they were scattered across the face of the earth, each one with its own beat, and each one with its own rhythm. As the dry bones are being revived, the beat begins again at the heart of the tribe.
Hello, welcome to the Heart of the Tribe weekly show. It's always funny. I feel like I have to differentiate now since we have an entire platform called Heart of the Tribe, and I've still got my show called Heart of the Tribe. But it is aptly named, and today you're going to see even more evidence of that. It all started when Yah just dropped on my heart back in 2002 that the tribes were alive and well on planet Earth, and they had something to say, and that there was a way to recognize them, and that there was a treasure trove of understanding to be had for those that were willing to dig. And so I've been digging with Yah in this direction for quite a while, and I have a friend with me today who has been digging with me. So please join me in welcoming my friend, Leigh Caruthers. Hello, Leigh. Welcome.
Hi, Shell. Thank you so much for having me again. I am so loving this journey we're taking together. It's pretty amazing.
I'm really enjoying it too. Today we've got a very exciting tribe. I love studying this tribe, the Tribe of Zevulun. Yeah, it's just, and the corresponding lymphatic system, which is just amazing, isn't it?
It is, and whoever thought talking about the lymphatic system would be so exciting, but it is. It's so exciting.
I would have never thought that myself, and it's just been amazing to hear, when Yah kind of dropped this into my spirit a few weeks ago. We've just kind of taken off with it from there, that they do correspond to the tribes. And what we are digging up, it's amazing what your knowledge of the medical procedures and how the body works, your knowledge of anatomy, what you've been able to line up with what we're finding in the scriptures concerning Zebulun. It's really exciting.
Thank you. It is exciting because it's really just letting Yah's creation speak for itself. And to me, it's just showing, look, you were actually my first tabernacle. So they correspond to each other, the physical and the actual, what we are, and within the tribes and each of their responsibilities. It just, the more you look into it, I would tell people, I would suggest, look into this also with yourself. You can pull things up and look into the tribes and study. It's so wonderful and just shows you his grand plan. Like it's there.
That's what's so amazing, is being able to see the intricacies of his grand plan. I've always known it because all of creation speaks of this absolute, beauty of design that you see all over the place. But then when we really start digging in like we're doing, it just comes up more and more and more. It's very convincing evidence of an intelligent, loving creator, isn't it?
Right. And boy, was he a creator. Is he a creator? Because the intricacies that we're learning through all the body systems and the intricacies of the actual tribes, there's no way any of it's an accident. There's just
right.
No way. This was his supreme intelligence and knowing what we would need to be able to function, and what the tribes would need to be able to function.
Absolutely. Well, I know that I have a little bit to share, and I know you've got quite a bit to share. So I'm going to go ahead and add my research to the screen, and we'll go over that with what I'd found in the scriptures. And then I'm going to be passing the baton to you, Leigh, and don't feel free to interrupt me if you want to interject while I'm doing something. I don't mind a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on to the screen so we can take a look at it together. So this was back in 2002, the night that I was sitting there studying after I've gotten the left foot of fellowship for my position as a fine arts pastor in the local church because I did not want to lead the Easter egg hunt any longer.
Go figure.
I was unordinated, deordinated, whatever you want to call it, right? And sit home. So I got out my Bible and I began to study diligently. And before long, Yah began to speak to me. And one night as I was sitting, it was a Shabbat, and I was sitting by myself at the kitchen table studying. And this is what I was studying was Genesis 49. And I saw that verse about gather you together and I'll tell you what shall befall you at the end of days. And that very night, Yah spoke to me and he said, you're from the tribe of Zevulun. And I'm going to explain this to you. This was the very first one he showed me. He said, I'll show you in the Psalm what the heart cry of the entire tribe is. And you're going to understand your own heart a little better. And what your purpose is. So what he showed me that night was Psalm 104, verses 24 through 25. And it says, O Yahweh, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions, this great and wide sea, in which are innumerable teeming things, living things, both small and great. Well, as soon as I read that Psalm, that began to resonate with me, immediately. I love the ocean. I love getting out on a boat. My favorite are always sailboats. I love to travel that way. I have spent time as a mate on a sailboat. I have worked on boats. I've taught people to snorkel. I have been a glass bottom boat tour. I have been hoisted up a sail in the middle of a storm to put down WD-40 down the mast. I love this kind of travel, right? And what's so funny is I have a very natural, inquisitive thing. There's always something in me that wants to know what's under the water. This is why I love doing the glass bottom boat tours. I lived in Key West at the time, and that was what I did is I went and I memorized lots of different facts and things about what we were seeing in the reef, all the fishes, all the coral, what the different types were, the ecosystem, so that I could do a good living narrative as we went over this reef when we took the tourists out every day, and I could explain to them what we were physically seeing at that moment. And I loved it. That was probably one of my favorite jobs because I just love that kind of stuff. And that ability to see underneath the water with that glass bottom in the boat was just fantastic. So, this whole thing really resonated with me. Now, as I began to study it out, here is kind of what Yah ended up showing me about all this, that the key to understanding the heart of Zebulun is evangelism. He made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the surface of the earth, having determined appointed seasons and the boundaries of their dwellings, that they should seek Yahweh, if perhaps they might reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. And that's Acts 17:26 through 28. I love that verse. We find the naming of Zebulun in Genesis 30, verse 20. Leah said, Elohim has endowed me with a good dowry. Now my husband will live with me because I've borne him 6 sons. And she named him Zebulun. So what do we know from this? We can see from this that Leah saw Zebulun as a gift that she was able to bring to Jacob. This was her dowry. Her 6 sons were her dowry, right? There's a sense of shalom within the accomplishment of bringing forth sons, that she's done a job well, right? And there's contentment in that place of belonging, because when you look at this whole story of the naming of the sons and the strife that was between the sisters, and the fact that Yaakov loved Rachel but hated Leah, right? for
She
her to,
definitely wasn't the favorite one, right?
she wasn't, it said, it talked about like the difference of their eyes, that she had more weak eyes and that Raquel had, vibrant, alive eyes, that this would, I imagine from my study, from what I can tell, they were most likely twin sisters, right? Probably identical twins, other than the eyes. And so it was the passion for life that is seen. That's the eyes are the window of the soul, and that vibrant type of personality was probably more on Rachel's wheelhouse than it was Leah's.
Right.
Yeah. So to get over that fact and to settle into a life of contentment and what you've been able to accomplish, and a knowledge that your relationship with your husband is secure, something had to have switched, right? And it ends up being so that Raquel dies in childbirth and is buried out in a dangerous place, a difficult place, right? Whereas when Leah dies, she's buried, and Yaakov says, now when I die, make sure that you take my bones out of Egypt and put them with Leah. He wanted to be next to Leah for all eternity, so you can even see this in that dwelling. But it took quite a while for it to get to that point for Leah. I find that really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The symbol of Zebulun on their tribal banners that they carried in the wilderness was a ship, like a sailing ship. It comes from the prophecies of Yaakov and Moshe. So the prophecy of Yaakov is found in Genesis 49, starting in 13. Zebulun will dwell at the haven of the sea. He will be for a haven of ships. His border will be on Zidon. Zidon comes from H6721 in the Strongs and the Brown Driver Briggs. It's pronounced Zidon or Sidon, and it means like a hunting ground. Specifically, it can be translated to catch fish or be a fishery because of the location of the land as an ancient Phoenician city on the Mediterranean coast of northern Tyre. This gives us the connotation of the evangelistic giftings within this tribe. And now if we look at that Phoenician city of Tyre, we also know that that became the main city of Babylon, so we can see all this stuff in there, that this was a place, not an easy place to be productive in, right? As far as for the kingdom, because it was diametrically opposed. So this gives us the connotation of the evangelistic giftings in this tribe. In Matthew 4:19, Yahusha promised those that would come after him, he would make them fishers of men. So in Moshe's prophecy, we look in Deuteronomy 33:18 through 19. Of Zebulun, he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents. They shall call the peoples to the mountain. There they will offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall draw out of the abundance of the seas, right, out of the waters, the hidden treasures that are of the sand. In this, we also see the heart of the evangelist working with the tribe of Issachar, who is known for their understanding of the times and knowing what Yasharel ought to do, found in 1 Chronicles 12:33. We talked about that last week. I find this to be a shining example of how different giftings can work together to accomplish the building of the kingdom of Yahweh, because that is what we're supposed to be doing, isn't it?
Yes.
So a really interesting time period that I spent some time looking at in preparation for this is for the people of Yasharel. It's found in the book of Judges, chapters 4 and 5. I have a little map. Let me see if I can just bring this up for a second. I have to drive my mouse correctly, which is not always easy. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I was looking at this. here this map is showing us, what this territory would be. So this is around the time of the book of Joshua, which would have carried into Judges, right? So we've got the Mediterranean Sea over here. You've got Asher on the coastland, Naphtali right there. Look how tiny Zebulun is right there, and Issachar right there, kind of nestled into the middle. There is a Bashan, going over here. Look at the huge territory of Manasseh. You can see the river Jordan right here passing through. So we can see the half tribe of Manasseh was on that side of the Jordan, the tribe of Gad, and the tribe of Reuben. Remember, as they were going into the land, they said, we want to stay on this side. And so that ended up being their territory. Then we've got Ephraim and Dan and Yehuda, Simeon, right? And so we can see all these things right here. So in this particular story, Zion is up here. Okay. And so we're looking at that. It's in this tribal territory of Naphtali. Okay. And you'll see these different cities here kind of mentioned in the story. And so now let me get back to my other thing. Okay. So this is what I wanted. I wanted you guys to be able to see that. But Yasharel had been living in apostasy in this time period. When you look at the judges, they would get themselves into trouble. They would cry out. Yah would give them a leader. They would get out of trouble for a while. Then they would repeat, rinse and repeat, right? Just do it over and over again. So they had been in apostasy, and it was being called evil in the sight of Yahweh. He called what they were doing evil. And so it says he sold them to Yabin, the king of Canaan. Right. So Deborah was a prophetess and a judge of Yasharel in Mount Ephraim. So she lived in that territory of Naphtali, but she was from Ephraim. She lets Barak of Naphtali know he is to lead warriors from Ephraim and Zebulun to war. Do I have this as Ephraim? I'm sorry, of Naphtali and Zebulun to war against Sisera. So I had that part wrong. That should have said Naphtali. Jael, the woman of Haver the Keni, was the one who was critical in this battle. She's the woman who gets to take credit for the killing of Sisera. And her name, Jael or Yael, means mountain goat. It's the place they were from is Keni, which is where Yithro, the father-in-law of Moshe, was from. After the battle was won, this was the song that Deborah sang. And I love this out of Judges. It's Judges 5:12 through 14. It says, awake, awake, Deborah. Awake, awake, and utter a song. Arise, Barak, and lead your captivity captive. You, son of Avinoam. Then he made him that remains have dominion over the nobles among the people. Yahweh made me have dominion over the mighty. Out of Ephraim there was a root of them against Amalek. After you, Benjamin, among your people, out of Machir came down governors. So it's giving like different abilities and job functions of these different tribes is what this is doing. And it goes on for a lot of them. But I wanted to stop it here with the one that's given for Zebulun. It says, and out of Zebulun, they that handle the pen of the writer, which I found very interesting. So the word pen is the word shabet, which is also the same root word for a rod, the same rod that Aaron carried. It's the word that's used as staff. It's the word that's used as scepter, like a scepter of righteousness, the scepter of David, right? It's also the same word that's used for tribes. It has to do with authority and leading, right? So you see that. So this is given, there is a rod of authority that is given to this tribe of Zebulun. You know, it's not the same rod that Levi carried. It's not that same rod, but there is still a rod of authority, which I find very interesting. Okay, so the word writer is safar. It is a samach, a pay, and a resh, which means to number or count, to take an account of, to count accurately, right? So it all has to do with setting things in order and having things be accurate. Okay, so when I went to put together a word picture, I've got a shin, a bet, and a tet for the shabet, for the staff, the scepter, the rod. And then we have a samach, a pay, and a resh for safar. So the word picture I see is destruction or destroy the house that scatters into the nations. How are we going to do this? We're going to be supportive with our words in our mind, to man's mind. We're going to have correct words to speak. To me, that would be having words of truth. Well, what is the best words of truth if it's not the good news of the gospel, which is to go out into all the nations to make us as fishers of men, you know? So we really end up seeing that. So in Judges 5:15 through 17, and what I'm trying to do is get to 18, but I'm reading the context because this is the rest of what it had to say about Zebulun and Naphtali in this story. It says, and the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar and also Barak. He was sent on foot into the valley. For the divisions of Reuben, there were great thoughts of heart, right? Reuben tends to be very wishy-washy. Oh, I'll go to the battle. Oh, maybe I won't. Why abode you among the sheepfolds to hear the bleatings of the flock? This is what she's crying out. Reuben, why wouldn't you get over your wishy-washiness and come to the battle? Right? This is what she's asking him. For the division of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. Gilead abode beyond the Yarden. And why did Dan remain in ships offshore? It's like, Dan, brother Dan, you knew that we had a problem, and yet you wouldn't get off your ship and come and help. This is what she's saying to him. Asher continued on the seashore. They didn't bother coming to the battle either. They just stayed right there at the beach. All right. And they abode in his breeches. All right. So, but then it says, of Zebulun and Naphtali were a people that jeopardized their lives unto the death in the high places of the field. Amazing.
Wow.
Right? From this story, we see that Zebulun and Naphtali are both the type of warriors that will run to the battle and not away from the battle. And I always find that very interesting because, you know, I don't know a whole bunch of people who've been given a direct word of what tribe they're from. I have been given a direct word, you know, that I am from Zebulun. And my husband actually was given a direct word that he is from Naphtali. And so I always find it very interesting to see how Zebulun and Naphtali work so well together, because they work very well together. Mm-hmm. They are both the kind of warriors that run to the battle and not away from the battle. And I would have to say that that is mine and my husband's personality in a nutshell. We often just, you know, give each other a high five when we're facing something difficult. We'll give each other a high five and say, Team Wagner, here we go. You know, we're going to do what needs to be done.
I totally agree. And I have a definite pull to Zebulun as well. Being in healthcare, I've always been the person that you have to be willing to run to the battle and not away from it. There's just so much to be fearful of when you see someone's world falling apart like that. You know, I totally get that.
Yeah, it's funny. I know that you and I have had conversations where we both can really relate that, like, when something traumatic is going on in front of you, you just do the right thing. You just do the right steps. You're not wondering
The
what
fear
you're
is
just
somewhere else,
yeah.
right?
It's you're able to encapsulate the fear and put it away, or any emotional type response. We're able to kind of throw it into a box, put that box behind us, deal with the situation. And then later, 2 or 3 days later, a week later, whatever it is, then you have to deal with that flood of things that you tried to encapsulate and put into a box,
Right.
and deal with that later. And I bet you're going to explain more about that when we get to the lymphatic system. I can't wait to hear about it. All right. So in Isaiah 40, verse 9, it says, O Zion, that brings good news, get you up to the high mountain, O Yerushalayim, that bring good news. Lift up your voice with strength, lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Yehuda, behold your Elohim. I see that even with that pen of the ready writer, right? There's a word that can't help but come forth. And it is a word that comes forth with authority and in truth. It's just part of who Zebulun is. You can't keep them shut up. And I know that every teacher I ever had would agree with that. And so would my husband.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh, so funny. I love this from James, your husband. He's talking about learning the pictographs is my new favorite thing. So much missing context with the regular word. It's so true, isn't it, James? I find it amazing every time I try to peer into one, and the more we do it and the more we sharpen each other with it and get to see things, it's like we're starting to we're moving beyond one word, and we're starting to get, partial sentences, which is just incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It feels like our learning is increasing in this area. All of us that are doing shows here together. It's interesting. So in 1 Chronicles 12:33, of Zebulun, such as went forth to battle, expert in war, with all instruments of war, 50,000, which could keep rank. They were not of a double heart. This one really gives me a lot of insight into the tribe. This one statement. Thank you, Rivka. I'm glad you're loving it too. This to me really makes so much sense, because even when I think about myself, I have no trouble. It doesn't bother me to not be, top dog. I can easily work with the Judahs and the Issachars and the ones that need to be out in front. It never bothers me at all. In fact, it's probably more comfortable to me to be in more of a supportive role. I can do the front role if I need to, but I like that supportive role. And I love working with, others that have a message to bring forth. And if I can see that and believe in it, I'll give it all I can to be supportive. But the not being of a double heart, this is really important in my life. And again, I put this verse there just to show that Naphtali's always working with them, right? We're finding this over and over. But out of James, it says, and I love these verses. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of Elohim that gives to all men liberally and upbraids not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. And see, you can see Zebulun, they're used to being on the high seas. They know how to ride the waves. They know how to still be in command in the midst of all the craziness. It doesn't take them off course. They're made to be able to stay on course in the midst of things that are crazy and wishy-washy, right? Says, let not that man think that he shall receive anything of Yahweh. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And I know that this is so true in my life, as far as, and I see this in other Zebulunites, there's a zero tolerance for wishy-washy or double-mindedness. because they're so set, and I know this is true. I am so set on what my mission is. It is to spread the good news of Yahusha and to save as many souls from peril as is possible. And for those that have had a walk but are starting to drift away, it's like a driving mission to want to go and help them get back into the right place, right? For those that are being lost and going off in peril, and it's such a driving mission that if other people don't have that focus and seem wishy-washy and they don't know what to do, it's very hard to tolerate, and once someone has fooled me and I have found out that they are not who they said they were, and they're more into self-promotion than promotion of the kingdom, it's really game over, and that is a trait of a Zebulunite. You'll be hard pressed to ever win their trust back. They will watch and be absolutely sure that Yah has really done a redemptive work in you before they trust you again. I mean, this is so true. I know it's so true with my husband and I, that we will do anything to try to, help someone and be in that relationship. We both have a real gift of hospitality. We're always wanting to welcome in. I love people of other cultures. I always have, I'm always looking for over there. I'm always looking for ways to get the word of Yah out, to be out and amongst the people. And I love people to work with me in that, but betrayal is not something that I know how to tolerate. When I find out someone's not truly there for me, that they don't have my back, I mean, the door gets shut. It's part of who I am. It's very hard to trust people who do that. So a Zebulunite is someone who does demand loyalty from her friends. Zebulunites will give you their all, but if you don't have their back and are not a true friend, once they know that, a Zebulunite is done. And that is how it works. So I found this
interesting, though, right? I mean, to stay focused, kingdom-minded, it has to be that way, because I see that also as leaven. When we allow something like that, someone that's wishy-washy, that's allowing that leaven into your life, because just that backsliding way back and forth can draw you into that, so that's a protective mode Yah gave us. That's our ruach protecting us.
I believe that. And because when I'm supporting something, I give it my all. I mean, I give it 100%. If I'm in, I am 100% in. But once I can see that someone else is not clear in their mission, and I can tell we don't have the same mission, and I see other missions, some type of self-promotion, deception being allowed to creep in, and nobody will do anything about it, or it won't be recognized, because I'll work with people. I'll say, listen, there's a problem here. There's a problem here, listen, there's a problem here. But once I realize that I'm working with somebody, that their mission is not clear, and that they are tolerant of things that should not be tolerated, I'm done. Right. I can't do it. I can't give it my all, because I just can't be in something where I can't give my all. I have to be able to give my all into what I'm doing, or it's very black and white for me in that area.
And I feel like it is for Yah as well. He gives you your energy and strength to carry out his mission, not yours. And you can't give of that energy that's been given to you for this mission. You can't have that extrapolated, taken away from you,
Yeah. And
because you put back.
Because you and I both really relate to Zebulun, of course, our view is gonna be different, because this makes perfect sense to us. And there's 12 tribes for a reason. We don't all think the same. But right. we do have a very specific mission. And this whole thing for me is about trying to look at the body as a whole, look at strengths and weaknesses, understand who a certain group of people are, learn how to understand that this is how Yah made them to be, and see how, even if we are different, we can get along with others and have more tolerance for each other and have more. And I know it is, I tend to be very black and white with stuff like this. And it's how Yah did make me. But I have to keep this in mind myself and say, okay, mature, look at different aspects and other people's paths and what their giftings are. And so that's what I love about this study, is it's all about me and others trying to learn how to value others and their differences. And because they may have strengths that I need, I may have strengths that they need. It takes the whole body to operate together, to make it function. Yeah. All right. So I was looking at the stone on the breastplate. It is an aquamarine, in my opinion. It's got, aqua means water, marine means sea. So it's like the water of the sea, which would be salt water, right? I found a picture I kind of liked of this particular gemstone to share with everybody. I think that one's really pretty. It kind of even has like the foamy white at the top, right, of the waves. And then we've got the beautiful color of the sea. So here in Romans 10, starting in verse 7, or who shall descend into the deep? That is to bring up Mashiach again from the dead. But what says it? The word is nigh you, even in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith, which we preach. That if you shall confess with your mouth Adonai Yahusha, and shall believe in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, ye shall be saved. For with the heart man believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto Yeshua. For the scripture says, whosoever believes on him shall not be ashamed. For there's no difference between the Yahudi and the Yavani. For the same Yahweh over all is rich unto all that call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of Yahweh shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the Besserah of peace and bring good news of good things. And that was, what I had to share on this. There was one song that I saw that I just wanted to share real quick. It's this verse. It's this song called Throw Out the Lifeline. And as I was reading Gwen Shaw's book about the tribes, she had this in there for Zebulun. And so I'm just going to share just a small portion of it. And then I'm going to pass it over to Leigh. I just thought that was really beautifully done.
absolutely beautiful. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do here at Heart of the Tribe. We're trying to throw out a lifeline,
Yeah.
to those that have never been on the walk, but then also for those who may be waxing cold,
Right.
and falling away, getting caught up in the darkness of today.
Yeah.
It will sure pull you away if you
It
let
will.
it. Mhm.
It will.
But there are those of us that are willing to throw out that lifeline. It may not be the most popular because it's not the most extreme or eye-catching or whatever is going on, but it's going to be the word of Yah.
That's
it's going
right.
to be him and Yahusha and what we can do to help get you back on your path with those that love you. We love the body. We truly do.
We do.
Absolutely. Well,
We
I'm
do.
excited to share what I've found. And a lot of everything you touch, actually everything you touched, are things that I read your wonderful book that you let me borrow and use that you've written on the 12 tribes. It's amazing. It really is.
Thank you.
And eye-opening to help figure this out. So I'm going to share my screen of what I have learned looking at Zebulun and looking at the lymphatic system. And I'm just so thankful that Yah sent this to you. I think it's just his way of saying, I know there's all this stuff out there, but come here to me and look with me at this, because you've missed this.
Right.
This has been missed, and now is the time for me to really bring this out, because this is going to bring hope and understanding as to why people like you and I run to danger, why people like Robert are going to have their personalities to want to work together with us. It's so helpful. Not only that, but it gives an understanding to your health. If you can understand how these systems are working, not just in correlation to the tribes, but within you, it's a better understanding to your health.
Yeah.
So with Zebulun, like you touched on, their meaning is dowry, because the 6 sons were Leah's dowry, right?
Yeah.
And a dowry is something, that was going to be what was going to set her apart from Rachel, because she had those 6 sons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the great part. So with dowry, we see the Zion. Did I have that right? Yes. The Zion, yes. The Bait, and the Dalet. So Leah saw Zebulun as a gift that she was able to bring to Jacob. Her dowry were her 6 sons. And that is a notation from your book. The banner is a ship. And Shell notes the prophecy of Jacob found in Genesis 49:13 that she covered. But one more time, I wanted to mention the Zebulun will dwell at the haven of the sea. He will be a haven of ships. His border will be on Zidon. And that just was so important to me, because as I dug in, I realized how much they correlate together. The trade of Zebulun being in the sea and the ships, and the lymphatic system that maintains our fluid levels in our body and tissues by removing all the fluids that leak out of blood vessels. And it's important for optimal functioning of our general and specific immune responses. So our literal immune system is reliant on the lymphatic system, is just so very important. If you ask me, like them being willing to run into war, that absolutely is what your lymphatic system does for you all the time. It's willing to run into war. So breaking down the Zion, I got weapon, bait, the house, Dalet, the pathway. And what I saw in this, and like we all say, there's probably 1,001 interpretations, but what I was led to was a weapon within the pathway of our house. And what do I mean by that? What does that mean? We're fixing to see that. Zebulun camped with Yehuda, and they camped alongside Issachar. And as we saw in the last two discussions, Yehuda tribe correlates with the respiratory system, and Issachar correlates with the nervous system. And all three of these body systems camp together within our body. And boy, thank goodness do they, because we're fixing to see that together within our body, requiring assistance from each other for complete homeostasis and well-being. Like, we need that to function. And
Right.
Here is a picture of our lymphatic system. Now, the first thing I saw, of course, being medical, I'm like, yes, that's a lymphatic system. But I see a ship waterway now when I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I see rivers and streams and oceans. It goes from the top of your head all the way down. And that just impressed upon me how closely related they are. They really, truly are. And that lymphatic system, we're going to see how it shadows our other blood circulatory system.
Wow.
So the lymphatic system is a network of delicate tubes. They're so delicate, and to me that's another thing that just stood out to me. And they're throughout the whole body from your head down. It drains fluid that's called lymph that has leaked from the blood vessels into the tissues and empties back into the bloodstream via the lymph nodes. You have these lymph nodes also that correspond from your head to your toes in and around vital organs, because this leakage happens throughout your bloodstream for various reasons. So the main role of the lymphatic system includes managing our fluid levels in our body, reacting to bacteria, dealing with cancer cells, dealing with cell products that otherwise would result in disease or disorders, and absorbing some of the fats in our diet from the intestine. So they have so many important functions there. As you see, the fact that Zebulun, Issachar, were with Yehuda, those systems are so important together. If any one of them is out of line or out of whack, the whole thing is going to break down. And that's just so important to realize. So the 6 sons of Zebulun and the six lymphatic organs. When I was putting this together, I was like, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding me.
That's amazing.
Right?
Every week, every time we talk about this, I just get amazed again, over and over.
Absolutely. And it's Yah, Yahweh, he's the grand designer behind all of this. And nothing's, like I keep saying, it's not an accident. This is all so intentional. And if one of these systems wasn't there, or if it was missing all 6 lymphatic organs, just like if she was missing one of those 6 sons, it would have changed the outcome for us and for her completely. So it is the grand design. So Zebulun, which means dwelling of honor, that was a thing that stood out to me as well. Good dowry and the dwelling of honor. And I thought, wow, dwelling of honor and good dowry. Let's see where I could draw some lines between that. So within our 6 lymphatic organs, those are our bone marrow. That's where your red blood cells are made and most of your white blood cells, your thymus, your lymph nodes, your spleen, your tonsils, and mucous membranes. And within these structures dwell these specialized cells that destroy and filter harmful substances from their bloodstream. So that's where I got the weapon that's dwelling within, because those specialized cells are fighting constantly for us. It's not just parts of our blood that are doing this. We've got to realize how important your lymphatic system is, and those cells that are destroying and helping filter all the bad stuff that we don't need, right?
Yeah. It's amazing. I hardly even knew that the lymphatic system existed until I had some things that were challenging it. And then I found out that I had a lymphatic system.
I had a similar, I know I've told you before, but I had a similar incidence with my lymphatic system where you're like, oh, that's very important to have all of your lymph nodes, because people with cancer and people that have had a lymph node removed, that whole drainage system is now disrupted. So where those lymph nodes are removed, that fluid leaks out still. It's just there's nothing there to grab it. So it swells. It can cause lymphedema, which can be very extremely painful, as if a person dealing with cancer and everything that goes along with it isn't bad enough to deal with. They're also, if their lymph nodes are removed, they're going to deal with that for life.
I've wondered if the removal of the tonsils in so many children doesn't result in like some chronic sinus.
Yes, because the tonsils are part of our lymphatic system, and their ability, they're there to grab as we breathe in irritants in the air or bacteria or viruses or anything that we can't see. And trust me, if you could see what was floating around you, it would freak you out.
I bet it would. I would say that about the angelic realm as well, right? But I can really see that in my own life, because of course I had my tonsils out when I was about 6. And I'd had 1 or 2 strep throats, and that was just the answer of the day.
The main culprit of repetitive like strep throat or tonsillitis is, number 1, not changing your toothbrush after you finish antibiotics. And number 2, there could be someone in your house that's a carrier, a non-symptomatic carrier of strep throat. We had, when my daughters were small, they all kept getting strep throat. And I thought they're just drinking after each other, and then found out one of us in the house was a carrier that wasn't sick. So we gave them antibiotics and it quit. There's so much more that could be going on. Removing tonsils and adenoids should be one of the absolute last things that's ever done. And I hope that there are some parents listening. Your children need their tonsils.
Yes, they really do. Please don't yank them out. I always wondered too, because in my household when I grew up, it was filled with 2 chronic smokers. I mean, 2 that smoked like chimneys all day. One was a cigar smoker. The other was Terryton cigarettes. And I mean, this house was always just full of smoke. Right. And so, let's just yank our tonsils out instead of quit smoking.
And what parents also don't realize is being around that chronic smoke causes chronic earaches in children, because their eustachian tubes are not closed completely. And an earache can then cause tonsillitis. Everything's connected, like I said.
My little brother had to have tubes put in his ears,
That's the secondhand cigarette smoke. I kept earaches growing up from being in a house where people smoked in the house. I stayed sick. I did. Mm-hmm. And we see, though, those specialized cells and their dwelling of honor within us, and the good dowry they bring our bodies with protection. That is definitely what we see there with the lymphatic system. And even like you were saying with your tonsils, oh my goodness. And then you've got a whole lifetime of having an autoimmune disorder, because structures that Yah gave you to fight infection are now gone. And don't get me started on how money is made for pharmaceutical companies for us to stay sick,
Right.
So as noted in an article I found, Life is in the Blood, and I've got that article. You can find it at answersingenesis.org. This was a wonderful explanation. The fabric of life idea reveals that the Creator purposefully wove together both blood and lymphatic capillaries. Like, it was a blessing for me to find this article, because everything I was trying to articulate, it helped me be able to put that together. You can't miss the delicate dance that goes on between the two as the lymphatic system collects and removes the fluid leaked out of the blood capillaries that they shadow all throughout our bodies. I wish I had pulled up, I did have a picture. I just forgot to add it in, but it was a picture of our cardiac and capillary system and the lymphatic system. And they're literally a shadow of the circulatory system because they have to be right there to grab everything that's leaking out of those capillaries. And
yeah, that's interesting, even with that whole mention of, you know, the staff and the scepter, because Levi is right, that circulatory, right? And they had that scepter of the priesthood, and yet we also see a scepter in Zebulun that's not the main scepter, but it is a scepter nonetheless. Very interesting.
That is so interesting. It really is, because it is a perfect shadow of each other, you know, and they have to have each other to function. We saw Zebulun was willing to run into battle, you know, when most everyone else is like, I'm just going to hang out on the beach, you know. Even within our body, the lymphatic system or Zebulun system is willing to do that battle and fight for us. And a lot of times it results in having to have lymph nodes removed, because sometimes they can collect so much that they become necrotic and have to be removed. And that's them. They've gone to battle for you and they gave it their best shot, you know.
Right. And that necrotic is like necrosis. It's death of the cell, right? It dies.
It is completely dead, like turns to stone, actually will turn to stone. For the longest, they weren't sure if the lymphatic system went up in the brain, though. And when I was in nursing school a long time ago, we read that it stopped at a certain level. But now scientists have found in not so many years ago that there's a lymphatic system that is in the meninges of our brain. And of course there would be, because that's the only way it would grab. We would have meningitis all the time if there wasn't a lymphatic type system going on to help fight any of those infections crossing the blood-brain barrier.
Right. Wow.
So isn't that interesting? And so delicate that they couldn't even find it before. That's the reason we didn't know. It is the most delicate lace work you will ever see. And that's the only way I can think of it, is looking at like a lace curtain or a lace doily, how intricate all those little designs are. That's literally the lace work of your lymphatic system through your whole body. It's so delicate and quite beautiful.
Wow. And isn't it interesting that, you know, just kind of thinking about personality wise, you know, isn't it interesting that that system is throughout every part of the body? And the body cannot function without it. Yet it is almost a shadow system. It's almost hidden. It's almost stealth. It's almost just kind of running in the background. It's not.
It is.
It's not something that everybody else notices. Yeah.
Right. Working in the background. Well, let's get into that, because this is the part that blew me away. So I was looking into Zebulun and Issachar, and you can't help notice how intricately they work together. Like I couldn't help noticing all of this. It's just one light bulb after another. So while I've dug deep into the history of these two tribes, I found Issachar, our nervous system, was the brainy brother. You know, they were the ones studying the Torah. They knew about the times and the seasons. Like it was everything to them. Everything. Yeah. However, the brother Zebulun earned the money that helped Issachar's studies. And I found it was so that even their heirs have never forgot this. And that was under study.com. That's a great website. Although if you don't pay for it, you can't look at the whole article, but you can go into study.com, and there was so much in there on the tribes also. I think that's actually a site for homeschooling, and I was blown away at the biblical teachings that were in there. They were quite amazing. So that's a good one for homeschoolers. And while it seems Issachar was focused on the spiritual, that Zebulun put his efforts into business, and particularly it seems as a sailor, of course, and the spiritual blessings of Issachar, as well as the wisdom he attained, were all free to Zebulun. as Issachar's financial backer.
Mm.
The Issacharites were totally devoted to Torah study. And Zebulun's tribe made their living as merchants, and they made a pact with those members of the tribe of Issachar to support them so that they may share in the merit of their Torah study. So there we go, with them in the background, right?
Right.
And it really reflects so much of the lymphatic system, because again, like you said, and like I've said, you just really don't know how important it is until you don't have one. You
Right.
know? My mom had breast cancer, and they removed all of her lymph nodes on the left side of her body. And that for 24 years, she dealt with the pain and swelling from missing those lymph nodes. I can't imagine what would happen to Issachar had they not had the financial backing to be able to do their studies, you know,
Right.
and that they had that backup, that shadow backup of their brothers that were willing. But look at what they were getting in return.
Yeah.
They were getting the knowledge of the Torah. So they were smart enough to know someone out of us has to work, but we also understand how important this knowledge is. So we've got this business deal with you so that we can benefit each other. And that's
Yeah.
what happens within our body. We're benefiting each other. All of the tribes actually have to work together.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome, though?
It's really amazing.
Also, I use a little bit of information from the ChabadWestside.org, and that's another really good research tool. Oh, Chris is here. Hi, Chris.
Yeah.
And Rebecca.
Hi, Chris.
Glad you guys are here. Let me see if I can get to my next one. I wonder if that's my last one. Yeah, I bet that is. That was my last one.
Okay.
But I wanted to discuss a little more deeply about, I thought I had put in there about the relationship, or no, that's it, the relationship between Zebulun and Issachar.
Yeah. Yeah.
How well they work together. So good. That was what I had. I thought I had one more slide, but I must have not put that one in there.
Well, this was wonderful. It was very, very interesting.
Absolutely. I just absolutely love, I think Zebulun's my favorite because it's such a reflection of what is actually happening within our body, you know, shadowing the circulatory and the nervous system, and the knowledge gained between the two and how they line up. You know, the brainy brother, Issachar, you know, that's what they did. They had to have the knowledge of the times and the signs and the calendar. And then you've got the other one working in the background that's willing to finance the whole situation.
I was looking at one thing in here. Let me just see if I can, because I think this will give us a little clue.
Excuse me.
It was just talking about the different places we see, the different tribes we see Zebulun working. And so in the wilderness, Zebulun was located on the east side of the tabernacle along with Judah and Issachar. So we see there. So what did we see? The respiratory and the nervous right there, right? And then also they were right then the backup to the circulatory, because Levi was right there doing the work of the tabernacle. So we see, you know, three connections right there, just where they were in the wilderness. Then in the promised land, Zebulun was given its lot towards the north. Its northern tribe was Naphtali. And that's kind of what I was ended up talking about today. Its southern was Issachar, its western Asher. And we've already figured out that is our skin system. Right. So that's going to be really interesting. And then the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee were on the east. So they had a connection. Even then, when we're talking about waters, we're talking about the fish that are out in the nations, you know, so they've even got that connection to the world, because that's where many of the fish have gotten caught, is in the world system. And they want to catch those fish and bring them into the kingdom. So I thought that was interesting. In the millennial reign, Zebulun will be in the far south, just between Issachar and Gad, and Gad is a troop. Their banner is the 3 tenths. Okay, so that's going to be interesting. Gates, and I don't remember which system we said
That's
Gad
what
was.
I'm looking at real quick. Gad. Oh, immune and hematology. So the immune system and your blood system, your hematology system.
Interesting. That'll be really interesting. Yeah.
I can't wait for that.
I know it. The gates of the holy city, Zebulun's gate, is located on the south side with Issachar and Simeon. Another interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It just blows me away at how, and the Simeon is your endocrine system.
The endocrine system.
The endocrine system, which is very important when dealing with like diabetes and those kind of disorders. That's what you would be dealing with. The endocrine system. All of our chemical messengers and hormones are within that.
Yeah, very interesting. So Chris had a question here. He was saying, can you share off the bat about Levi? Heard you mentioning. So we did go into, just so everybody knows where to find this, we did an entire program on this. It was not last Sunday's Let's Talk Torah, but the Sunday before.
Wasn't that the very first one we did?
It was. That was the very first thing that we looked at. So it was not.
That was the cardiovascular system.
And it's the video from Let's Talk Torah on July the 9th. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and that should be in the description. We've got a playlist, I know, on Brighteon, and I believe we may have one. If not, I'm kind of working on these playlists on YouTube. I've been trying to make them and put things in the right place. We're just doing so much so fast that it's hard to get it all into the right places. But we've got things going everywhere. But that's where you can hear that particular presentation that we did, because that was fascinating, wasn't it, Leigh?
It was. I wish I don't have my actual notes up here, or I could look at something really quick. But yes, that first one was the one that really got me hook, line, and sinker, because it was so relevant together with Levi and their responsibilities, and how they had the responsibilities over the temple, and I believe, or over the tabernacle. And I believe we were drawing lines between their functions and the functions of the cardiovascular system, and they lined up.
So we were able to look at all the duties that the Levites were given for the sacrificial system and what had to be done to take care of the holy place every single day. And we were looking at all that, and then we were looking at the 4 different aspects in the blood, the white blood, the red blood, the plasma,
right,
and
4 chambers in the heart. And how that was all relating. And I think you brought up the 4 pillars. Did you bring that up? Or am I thinking?
I don't remember. I know it was really interesting what all we found in that one. So
and that was a great start off to this. But like I said, I love the Zebulun, and where you had mentioned, I want to go back about the fishers of men. Wow, what a foreshadowing that is. But then also we have to look at the lymphatic system and realize that that's what's happening within us as well, because they're fishing for the good, because it helps break down fats within your intestines. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to. And it's also weeding out the bad, like you said. I think when we were talking earlier about, you got to take in the good and weed out the bad. Take in the good fish and throw out what's bad in your net. That's the same thing that's happening with that delicate, intricate lymphatic system that, may be in the background, but I promise you it's so very important, just like Zebulun, Issachar may have had the brains, but they had an awesome brother backing them up to give them the ability to be able to do that and share that knowledge. And I love that they had that relationship and they were able to work together that way. And I'm sure because they Zebulun was merchants and Issachar were in their studies. I'm sure, that's probably opposite sides as far as being able to get along with your brothers,
Yeah.
but to be able to pull together in their differences for a common goal. And the common goal was the knowledge of the Torah and the knowledge of the word of the Father.
One of the things as I was thinking about this and reviewing on it, you had mentioned yesterday when we were just kind of pre-chatting about what we were going to do, right? You were talking about when Yahusha was stabbed with the spear.
Yes,
and
that
so
was what I thought was my last slide. Thank
oh,
you.
well, good. I'm glad I brought that up, because here was what hit me, and then I want to hear further about this, that if they were stabbed and you've got this shadow system, and it's the lymph is water, right? It's kind of a dirty water, isn't it?
It's straw colored. Yeah, it looks
yeah.
yellow.
But if these systems are laid right on top of each other, well, you can't help but stab into the blood system without stabbing into the lymphatic system, and there would come forth blood and water, right?
What my question was, as a nurse looking at this, and I did chase this rabbit trail a little bit, because I thought, if he was stabbed on the left side through the spleen and into the heart, that would give us the maximum water and blood, because of the lymphatic system. That's one of the major organs of the lymphatic system. Digging into history, of course, in the pictures and the paintings, it's always on the right side that it's depicted, and that would not be where the spleen is. And the only reason I'm questioning is because of the amount of water and blood that we saw come out. And to me, I know that they speculated it pierced the heart and the meninges, that the sac that the heart fits in, right?
Right.
The sac that it's in. There's a very small amount of fluid in the sac that is around your heart that helps there not be a rub, or helps protect it from shock. It's like a waterbed, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But it's such a very small, minute amount. It really is a tiny amount. So if you pierce directly into the heart, you would only see the blood. You wouldn't see the water. And that was my question to that, is I really feel like there was, when he was stabbed, it quite possibly was through the spleen and then up into the heart, because of the amount of water and blood that we saw. And it was enough to know that there was water and blood.
Yeah. And I mean, and if, okay, so you're crucified, and so your upper body, is being extended. It's harder for the blood to pump into that, creating more pressure and fluid into the lower part of the body, because things are draining down and it's not coming back up as much per se.
Well, and you have to think that fight or flight that I've talked about before, your body that Yah made is so intelligent, it will shunt everything away from your periphery to your central body systems where your organs are. So everything is going to shunt and be right here in your torso if you're up like this, because it's going to, your body is going to instinctually protect itself. That's that fight or flight. If we keep all of our blood and fluid right here, it'll help keep our organs living longer, so even that lymph fluid to a degree would still be down in our torso and abdomen, yet that wouldn't increase the fluid around your heart. It just wouldn't,
Right. Very interesting.
I don't know. It's just something that Yah kind of poked me about and was like, this really may be what you're seeing here, is the pouring out of the lymphatic system, the water and the blood.
And these three things testify: the water, the blood, and the ruach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very interesting, and so Chris had a note here. I love how the programs on this platform just keep reinforcing and rolling from one to another, because Chris is saying he's going into Levi and Melchizedek on Out of Africa next week for the Hebrew study. That's fantastic. So that will be Wednesday at 1 p.m. EST. And so that is very exciting. So we can't wait to see that.
Right.
It was the Melchizedek right there. All righty. Well, we're really looking forward to that. Well, this has been very, very interesting, Leigh. Thank you so much. And I know you and James have a show coming up later today. You want to tell us what you guys are doing on Between the River and the Ravens?
Absolutely. We're doing the series of our walk, how we began our walk on the narrow path. And this week, tonight, we are discussing eating clean and the healthy diet. Because Yahweh made us, he's our creator, and the things that he said don't do and don't eat, or do this and do that, he said those things for a specific reason. So I'm going to be going into all of the physiological reasons of what happens when we don't follow his clean diet.
I absolutely love it that you've got the medical background and can explain so many things from that viewpoint, of how things work, how Yah set this up, and the intelligent design behind it all. It's just amazing.
I tell you, it makes me mad at myself a lot, though, because I wasn't always I wasn't practicing what I preached. I spent 11 years, the last part of my career, in home health. And the number one thing I was begging people to stop doing was eating pork, because of how bad the side effects from it are when you have diseases like congestive heart failure, diabetes, all of those diseases that truly are happening to us simply because of our lifestyle and the fact that we have ate things that our Father said don't do.
Yeah.
And he had a reason. It wasn't just to be bossy. It was because of what we're going to find out when we look into those animals.
Yeah. You mean his law wasn't just to try to keep us under his thumb and take all of our fun away? He actually did set these things up because he loves us?
Absolutely. He loves us, and he knew that if we followed what he said, that our bodies would be healthier and we would feel better, and which would make us happier, more blessed people. Right. Go figure that the creator that made us would know the directions and instructions for the creation that he gave us. It drives me crazy. Yeah. You get a new phone, you look at your phone, or a new whatever, you look at all the don't do this with it, don't do that with it, make sure you avoid this, or make sure and we'll follow that stuff to a T. Absolutely. But we're going to argue that the creator that made our body and our 12 body systems wouldn't know what we should and shouldn't put in it.
Absolutely.
Or they might need a day of rest,
Human nature. I know, it's so funny when I think about, the way that even my husband kind of fought me on the whole wanting to take the Shabbat. It was a real fight at first. And it was funny, because what I did was I took some good advice, which was, if you don't have the Shabbat, pray for it as a gift. And I did. And Yah ended up giving it to us. And now my husband is so funny, because he's like, don't let anything mess with my Shabbat. This is my Shabbat. Make the world go away. I mean, as soon as he comes home on Friday evenings, he starts shutting all the blinds, putting door stops up, turning off of his phone. He's like, let's just let it all go.
And that's the best way to do it.
And looking for what we're going to eat, right? It's a fun day at our house, because it's just Robert and I. And, I always try to just prepare things ahead of time. Like I've heard you talk about that. We can kind of do some finger food or some this and that and just make it fun. but to make it a day where we get to hang out. We get to hang out with Yah, we get to hang out with each other, we get to read scripture together, and it's just so much fun. It's a really fun. He'll look at me sometimes and go, "These are the best days of our lives." I'm like, "It really is, isn't it?" Yeah.
It brings so much joy to our life too. It's just nothing like spending that time with him and welcoming him into your marriage in your house and speaking his words in your house. You want to have a wonderful feeling home. Speak his word in your home. Spend your time with him on Shabbat in your home. You won't want to miss it. And that's why, because you're actually in his presence. He's with you in your presence, and you're celebrating him and everything that he's given us. It's a day he made for us, and praise him for those days. We need those days. I promise you.
It's a huge gift. Now understanding it is a huge gift. And I can see now that we have partaken of this gift for quite some time, it becomes very easy to see why the enemy wants to steal it away, because you truly are refreshed in a way that you can't get in any other way by taking that one day and leaving the world alone, and just being refreshed by God. It's a refreshment and a renewal that cannot come from any other source.
I totally agree. Absolutely. Oh, and tomorrow morning I am going to be on Mercy Poured Forth.
Oh, yeah.
And I am going to be discussing the differences between judgment and discernment, and why discernment is so important for us at this season and in our lives. It's a lot like the lymphatic system. I'm going to just say.
It's funny. The conversations just keep rolling forth, don't they? We are. I love how that's happening, how it just keeps getting reinforced.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we've been talking for quite a while, so I guess we will say goodbye to everyone for the day. Thank you so much, Leigh, for doing this with me. It's a delight to me. It's so much fun what we're doing.
Thank you. I love it too.
All right. So, and to our audience, whether you're watching live or whether you are watching later, we hope that this has been a blessing to you, that you are uplifted by it, that it gives you hope and renewal and new focus and new purpose. And may Yahweh be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you of his shalom. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Their journey began in Yasharel, but they were scattered across the face of the earth, each one with its own beat, and each one with its own rhythm. As the dry bones are being revived, the beat begins again at the heart of the tribe.